doing?
Because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
What's on your mind?
What are the issues facing you and your families today?
Before we ask for your vote, Alyssa Slotkin wants to hear about your concerns.
Democrat Alyssa Slotkin is running for U.S. Senate, and she wants to have a real conversation about your issues.
Is it support for our small businesses, funding for our schools, good-paying jobs, or opportunities for our youth?
Alyssa is already building a campaign around listening.
It's how she shapes her agenda in Congress.
And why Alyssa's already been endorsed by small business owners, pastors, and leaders from our community.
We know too many campaigns come to us right before the election and ask for our vote.
That's not Alyssa. She has a reputation for listening and delivering.
And this is your chance to help shape the agenda in Washington.
Make your voice heard. Go to alyssaslotkin.org/community.
Because in this campaign, your ideas come first.
I'm Alyssa Slotkin, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Slotkin for Michigan.
Go Alyssa.
Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was, a production of the Not Dead Yet, DeadlineDetroit.com. I'm Nancy Derringer. I'm sitting in for the intrepid Saeed Khan, who is traveling back from somewhere far away from this place and could not be here with us today. So expect a rockier ride than usual. I don't have Saeed's way with a segue or with a pop culture reference, but I will do my best. All right. Starting directly to what is really my left, but should be my right, is labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We have former WXYZ investigative reporter Jim Kiertzner. Our troika of lawyers make up the second layer here. We have Steve Fishman, Joel Sklar, and Bill Seikaly. And of course, it's all resting on the broad, strong shoulders of Deadline Detroit co-founder Allan Lengel. So, you guys, it was another week to turn all of our hair white and make it fall out and make us lose the will to live. So let's start with
I was way ahead of you from the beginning on this one.
with the white and the bald.
White
Yeah,
and bald.
Yeah, okay, whatever. It's been a hell of a week. Let's start in Washington, which we have been doing regularly, and discuss a little bit about what was the second big test of whether Joe Biden is, capable of continuing this campaign, and that was the press conference that he had yesterday after the NATO summit in Washington. From what I was able to tell from my looks at various news sources, if you just listen to what he said, he's perfectly lucid. He was talking about foreign policy at a level that Donald Trump will never, ever reach in his entire misbegotten life. But he did have some verbal stumbles. I think the headline in the Detroit News today said something like he flubbed some names.
We do have a video.
We have a
few seconds.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Oi.
Oi, as they say. Oi. I mean, and here's the thing. We all do this kind of stuff all the time. Every human being on the planet misspeaks, fumbles a name, gets something wrong. As we get older, we call them senior moments, but really they happen throughout our lives. So who wants to get us started with just a few words about, what your impression was if you watched the press conference? Steve.
My impression is the same as it was 2 or 3 years ago when I said he shouldn't run again. Nothing he could do could change it. The man is 82 years old, and you're talking about 4.5 years from now. Would you let your dad drive the car? You take the keys from the goddamn car, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the president of the United States. It's going to represent us all around the world. It's insane. The whole thing is insane. These press conferences mean nothing. Any speech he gives means nothing. He's an old man, and he ought to be proud of it and all the things he accomplished in this term and get out of the way. Because if he gets out of the way, and any young person, which will have to be somebody fairly young, 15 years, 20 years younger than him, they'll kill Trump. They'll kill him because his word salads are as bad as Biden's, and that's what you'll be able to run on. The same thing that they're doing right now. So that didn't change anything for me. The debate, that first 15 minutes, that was enough for me, and I really, really have no use for those who've been around him the last couple of years shielding him from this stuff. This is not Ronald Reagan's era. This is an era where the press is everywhere and social media is everywhere, and it's a bunch of crap, and he needs to go like tomorrow.
He's like a professor emeritus who comes in every now and then to give a lecture and maybe does a nice job, but that's about it. I don't think he's capable of working, a full-time job at this point in his life. He sounded great, but he didn't sound great. He's old, and it's so apparent that he's old and not able. He's going to get worse every day and every year, and it's just not responsible for him to run. That's never going to change.
Well, and go ahead, Bill.
It's interesting. Joni and I, my wife, who's smarter than I am.
All smart men say that.
I'll vouch for that.
I was only because he knew it was true. Jim smiling because he knows it's true. I didn't say better looking, Jim. I said smarter, but both of them. So I think that we're at two levels. One, I do think that what Steve and Joel said is true. I think that there is, whether it's an issue or not an issue, there's certainly a clear perception that he is not capable of continuing to do the job, and the trajectory is getting much worse. But there's another level at this point, and that is the fact that his inability to recognize the existence of the problem and to do what's right for the country is causing an implosion within the Democratic Party that is harmful to the party. And look, I don't care who argues this point with me. As far as I'm concerned, there is a risk that that democracy will come to an end if Trump is elected again. And therefore, this issue of whether he can do his best at this point in his life isn't the issue. It's what the Democratic Party can do and what is best for the Democratic Party and what's best for the American people. And I think we lose sight of the fact that those really are two separate analyses. And, I think that the genie's out of the bottle. I think that, I'd vote for a refrigerator. I think I've made it clear I'd vote for Allan. God knows I'd vote for Jim Kiertzner before I would vote for Donald Trump. I think I'm responsible for putting a couple child molesters behind bars, and I'd vote for them before I'd vote for him.
I think the current term, the current expression is, I would vote for Biden's head floating in a jar of formaldehyde at this point before them.
Which is accurate.
Which is absolutely accurate, at least for me anyway. I'm head in a jar.
But I think that the final issue here is, and I didn't think I'd say this because I really do love Joe Biden, and I really believe that history will treat this term of his presidency very well. I think he's done remarkable things in probably the most divided government we've ever seen, the most hostile government we've ever seen. He's gotten bills passed nobody thought he would get passed. So I have nothing but the utmost respect and regard. But at this point, his ego is becoming as much of a problem, not as much of a problem, but almost as much of a problem as Trump's ego. and you can't let that happen.
Until there's like some sort of insight or awareness by Biden himself, there'll be no change. And that's just fundamental. He has to have some insight, some awareness of his limitations for him to make the decision to change. And the question is, does he have that insight or the capacity for that insight and awareness? Because he's in denial.
I also think there's a question of what his inner sanctum or inner circle or, family, what people are saying to him. And based on what I'm hearing, there is still such a raw feeling about him being passed over by Barack Obama in 2015, not anointed by him, that it creates a blockage in terms of people saying, you didn't give him a chance to have his 2 terms. You can't do this to him now. That I just think is wrong because, one of Joe Biden's key phrases, and I've always felt like he meant it. I must have heard him say this 1,000 times. It's not about me, it's about us.
Okay.
And
let me cut you off there and say you're absolutely right. He says that a lot. But then when George Stephanopoulos asked him last week, if you stay in this race and you lose, what will you think? And he says, as long as I didn't know I did my best, that will be okay.
My goodness.
This is not about you. It's not about your best. It's about the fucking country.
Right.
Lengel, you've had your finger up for a while.
I was going to say, I think, and this is a tricky situation, but if people want him to step down, I think he's got to do it with dignity on his own. So I think people have put their bids in and made their points made. And hopefully he comes to that conclusion. I mean, ideally, look, Monday night would be just an amazing time, or when Trump's announcing his vice president, that he would make an announcement and take away from the Republican convention there. But I guess we'll see. I think he wants, if he does it, he has to do it with dignity, and it has to be on his terms. But I don't know if we can take that, if people want to take that chance.
Imagine if he did it just a few days before the convention started. I mean, that would be a jolt of super adrenaline to the Democratic convention. I mean, it would suddenly become must-see TV because everybody would want to know what was, how it was going to shake out. I mean, I'd like to see something like that happen. He didn't even have to wait that long.
One of the unfortunately, Nancy, the only problem with what you're saying, because I think that from a political strategic point of view, you're right. But can you imagine being one of those people who would be in the running? I mean, you'd be anointing Kamala Harris at that point.
Yeah.
Because nobody else would really have the chance. I don't think that's right. I think that's fundamentally anti-democratic. That's not what we ought to do. We shouldn't allow the perception that what happened when Hillary and Bernie were running in the primary might happen again.
Yeah. I see Ann, our viewer Ann, who
stand up. I'm dying to figure out what the rest of his shirt says. I hear
it says born in Detroit.
Oh, I didn't see in Detroit.
The greatest t-shirt ever.
Exactly. And David Porter just said that would be chaos. It probably would be. And Ann, who is a regular viewer of us and is always taking us to task in the comments for ageism, is saying this is, we don't get it. So
So I was watching Stephen Colbert last night, and Colbert teed off, and it's funny, old Joe Biden, and he had Gretchen. No, it was the night before. I'm sorry, because we were watching Gretchen.
We're gonna have some clips for the Gretchen Whitmer thing. So,
but we didn't see it the first night. But then he had on Martha Stewart, and Martha Stewart is 82, and he treated her with the utmost respect. And Martha Stewart does not have a history of malapropism like Joe Biden always kind of has. And it has gotten worse. I'm terrified. I am terrified at the idea of another Trump presidency. I am terrified of it. And again, I'm the Joe Biden's head in a jar of formaldehyde. I'm there. It's like the movie Sleeper. I will vote for my leader's nose.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's great.
All of those things, but I don't think, I don't think that any of this is helpful. I don't think it's helpful for the voters, because the convention, they're playing to the donors. They're playing for the party members. They're not playing for the voters out there who are trying to figure out what to do.
Right.
And I think that this is the greatest danger, that we're ignoring the actual voters. And I think polls, if you'll excuse me, and we have pollsters who I really admire, I think polls are mostly bullshit. And depending on your news source, what your polls are going to say. And that's my fear, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Jim. Sorry.
Well, so we're getting the comments from the viewers and so on. Let's take a poll. There are 7 of us. Let's see the hands of people who say Joe should stay in. Put your hand up.
That's not I don't think that's a reasonable question.
At this time.
Okay. Well, then, so assuming that he does step aside at some point, then you have the vacuum to fill. And Bill touched on this a second ago. I heard a scenario earlier this week from a person who's, I would call him a businessman, a political operative in the Democratic Party. One scenario he puts out there is, and we've seen 17 congressional Dems go public and say that Biden needs to step aside in the race, that if that happens now with a month to the convention, that you could have then everybody who's interested put their name out there and have the campaigning going on between now and the convention. And again, if Biden does this voluntarily, he could release his delegates and you could have someone become the new nominee, not necessarily Kamala. Right. Now, that's one scenario, but it would certainly be an indication of where we are in the times, and is that what's best for the party? It's an interesting scenario when I heard it.
I think Clyburn mentioned something just like that, Jim, where there would be kind of like almost a mini debate, things would start moving, and that was Jim Clyburn's idea. So it would be transparent. So it wouldn't be behind, in the back door or whatever, smoke-filled room.
Exactly.
And I thought that made a lot of sense. And I think that was in the New York Times maybe a week ago, but I thought that was a really good idea.
Lengel, could you post Anne's last comment? Because I think she raises a very important point here. These last 2 weeks has been a wrapped package of sunshine for Donald Trump. Every day that we talk about Biden being old and, whatever, we're not talking about Trump being, P.S., he's also old. He also talks bullshit because his head is a swirling mess of snakes or whatever it is. But he's also a criminal. He's also got he's got Project 2025 working for him. He's got Leonard Leo has basically been put in charge of the federal court system. We have a 6-3 Supreme Court, and if he's reelected, we will probably end up with like a 7-2 Supreme Court. I mean, it's going to be. I mean, we have to vote. We have to stick with Biden if Biden decides to stick with the race. But it's just going to. I mean, I can't imagine a worse election than 2020 or 2016. But this one has it beat by a mile. So there.
Right.
I think everybody that's in our age group, and Ann is obviously saying the same thing. You sit there and you think about, well, my mind is pretty sharp. We're like, I can still shoot jump shots. So therefore, if everybody else in our age group can do all those things, then we're fine. What they're forgetting is most of the voters we want to get out there are young people. And when I talk to my children they're not kids anymore, they're in their late 20s and early 30s. And when I listen to what they tell me about what their friends are saying, you cannot get these kids up off their ass. And I don't blame them. Can you imagine being 31 years old? And in a country of 340 million people, you see these two old farts walk out there for the debate. Can you even imagine what that would be like?
Yes.
And Nancy, right. Just in response to you, all those things about Trump, they're all out there. They're all well known, but it doesn't change that base. And it doesn't even, the double haters are the ones that I'm concerned about. And that's what I've been reading about in a lot of these articles. A lot of these double haters, if you put somebody else, a normal person, whether it's Kamala Harris, Gretchen Whitmer, or the man in the moon, if a normal person is against that guy, they're going to switch their vote. And that's what we're missing out on. It's not a discussion of age. It's not ageism to say you don't want somebody that you wouldn't give car keys to be the president of the United States. That's just not ageism.
I want to add to Steve's argument for this reason. Take a look at Barack Obama, who's still sharp, still great. Look at him when he got elected in 12, and look at him when he left.
08.
And look at him when he left the office in 16.
Yeah. Right.
The job of the presidency seriously ages a person. It is the most stressful job in the world.
George W. Bush.
It didn't age Donald Trump.
I'm not sure he did the job of the presidency.
He didn't do the job. Exactly.
He had no stress at all.
He turned it over to his idiot, enablers and everything else. But anyway, hey, Lengel, speaking of like what voters think, you have that clip from Comedy Central of their panel of African American voters,
six black people. From Metro New York area.
From Metro.
I got 6 from the tri-state area to ask, do we with Trump? Okay, so who will you be voting for in 2024? Daryl.
Do I have to say his name? I don't want to, but more than likely it's going to be Trump.
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Who are you going to be voting for?
Biden.
And then Victor?
I'm with her.
Oh, Biden, okay.
Trump.
Eric, Trump?
Biden.
Biden?
Trump.
6 people, 3-3, and these are black people who have extra reasons not to vote for Donald Trump.
And these are real people, not actors, right?
No, these are real people, right? And when he came through Detroit a few weeks ago, we had rappers like Detroit rappers standing up and saying that they were down with the clowns. So I'm sorry, what?
I can't remember, PZ or something. One of the rappers.
Oh, there was one was I swear Vezo. I forget who. PZ was the other one. But this when we talk about rappers, they're toddler names. I can't handle it. But
there was another Detroit rapper who was defending those rappers, and he said, "Look, when they sent Donald Trump to the grocery store, he came back with cereal and cereal bowls and milk. He delivered. I mean, it's crazy. People come up with their own narratives of what they believe a person to be, and it's just.
Go ahead, Steve.
I can tell you guys this: the First Step Act, which he signed, is a big deal in the black community, particularly in the city. I can't tell you the number of clients of mine, people that just go back and forth with me. How can white people talk about black people? Okay, all right, Eric, I'll shut up. What do I know about black people? My wife, my kids.
I was thinking the same thing. We're talking about black voters and black rappers. What do we know?
Well, we don't.
Not that it matters.
That was interesting. That was an interesting.
Not that it matters, but one of a black panelist had to drop out because his mother went to the hospital. But we tried to.
So there we go.
Well, wait a minute. Steve's got some creds on this one. I'm not going to let. He disappear?
Just bump off.
Never been so offended. He's gone.
Well, I mean, look, Steve's married to a black woman. He's got a black child. I mean, come on. He knows a little bit,
I think. So okay,
yeah, black son.
All right. Well, let's not go get off of this topic, but let's go to a subset of this topic. If Biden stays in the race, and if things continue to go the way they've gone for the last 2 weeks, there is the potential for serious collateral damage down the ticket, down ballot, as they say. So what does that portend for some tight flippable states or flippable races? Like, for instance, I was just in Ohio last weekend. Sherrod Brown is the senior senator from Ohio. He's a Democrat. He's a smart guy. He's got a great wife. Everything's, he's done a great job. But the GOP has taken serious aim at him with some MAGA chud named Bernie Moreno, and then there's one other guy I think who's going against him. And it's kind of terrifying to think that at some point, my native state could be represented in the United States Senate by J.D. Vance and Bernie Moreno. I mean, Ohio used to be a version of Michigan. You know, it had, you know, 5 thriving cities, farmland, you know, manufacturing, all this stuff. And now it's turned into some version of Alabama. I mean, how the hell did this happen?
Whatever the Ohio Republican Party has done is the opposite of what the Michigan Republican Party has done. You have to admit, I mean, we have a clown show. And the guys in Ohio, as despicable as they are, they seem to have it together.
Yeah.
You know, Jim Jordan, you know, being the exception. But how does Ohio, a sports state, justify having Jim Jordan, you know, rape enabler?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, I know. But Jim Jordan represents Northwest Ohio, which is, my husband's from Northwest Ohio. Believe me, it's a whole different country up there. So,
what is Northwest Ohio? What's the makeup?
Well, Toledo, but you know that area south of Toledo, which is, you know, it might as well be part of Indiana. You know, so he's from Defiance. But anyway, I would hate to see this. I mean, I think that if Biden loses this race, I mean, not only, you know, do we lose the country, but we also have he's gonna go out as Joe Biden Ginsburg. I mean, that's just all he's gonna be seen as, like the big. He miscalculated. He thought he would live forever, and he didn't. And this is what happens. So anyway,
we do have an age thing, by the way. Can we play this little video? Whoops. Hold on, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong one.
An Alabama woman celebrating a major milestone of a birthday. Helen Denmark from Birmingham turned 108 years old this week. Helen says she feels no different than when she was 107.
Well, I feel all right. I'll be here when I'm 110.
Helen says she stays young by drinking wine, eating dessert, and flirting with men with mustaches.
Guillermo, we just booked you a one-way ticket to Birmingham, my friend.
Do beards count too? Bill, you're nominated.
I may shave if that's true. Fishman can.
Okay. All right, we've spent half the show on Joe Biden and the United States of America. Let's pivot a little closer to.
Do you want
go ahead.
To play the Whitmer clip, Alan?
Yeah, let's play the Whitmer clip.
All right.
You know, I think that the debate rattled a lot of people, right? It was a lousy performance. I don't think anyone's disputing that. I spent some time with the president in the White House with a number of my colleagues shortly after the debate. I talked to him this past weekend with all the other vice chairs of his campaign, co-chairs, and, you know, he's up for this.
So that's what she's saying publicly, but to the point we just had down the ticket, does she really feel that way?
Well, you know, you have to, Jim, that's an interesting question. You know this better than most. You've got to be astute at political speak to get through this stuff.
Sure.
Because, you know, Biden was saying, I'm nobody, and only God could get me out. And, you know, you're beginning to see those kinds, the kinds of gaps you're seeing now. You don't know what is going on behind closed doors. I've been involved in some of the in some conversations with some senators and a couple members of the House, and you can't publicly say some of the things that you can say privately. You shouldn't say some of the things you say privately, publicly, because if he stays in the race, you don't want every member of the House and Senate who feel that way being out there. You'll see it on Trump's advertising. So you got to be, you know, engaged in political speak. Look, the Republicans are great at being hypocrites about this. Look at Mitch McConnell.
Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean,
well, no, Donald Trump is a pathological liar, but Mitch McConnell at least said, you know, he was morally and legally responsible for what happened on January 6th. This was despicable. He hasn't gotten away with anything by not being impeached. Look where we are today.
Right.
And yet, who's he voting for? Who's he supporting? Trump. We don't want that kind of hypocrisy, so these people are going to be quiet.
All right.
One person isn't
in
that category. Mike Pence.
Yeah. It's true. Who would have ever?
Can I?
Politics. Go ahead.
Let me just give you a quick snippet of a Mike Pence story. So the last election cycle, Pence came to Toledo to campaign for their ticket, and the station sent me down there at the Toledo airport. And the campaign had set up 5-minute one-on-ones with Pence in the airplane hangar. And it was right before the night before Trump had said something patently false about Michigan, and I think he rolled in Detroit about the pending election. And I tried to ask Pence about it, and I got the question out, and Pence started talking, somewhat ignoring the question and just giving the answer that he wanted to. And I tried to chime in and interrupt him with the follow-up questions, and I couldn't because he just kept talking. He was filibustering his 5 minutes. So at the end, I thought, okay, we're done. We got to clear out. And the next station comes in because it's a preset where the each station shows up. So he said, well, you don't have to go right away. Would you like to take some 2 shots? And I went, huh? You first of all, you know the nomenclature. And I said, okay, great. And then so the camera guy is taking the 2 shots. And then he says to me, and I couldn't believe it. He says, you know, I have to answer the way I have to answer, right?
Right. Of course. I mean, that's just smart politics. And I mean, give Whitmer this. She is a very astute politician. I mean, she's been in the game a long time. She knows how it's played, and she's not going to make any errors at this point. But let's.
I'll say real quick,
Pence. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
I'm going to say that all the people who are backing Biden, like Kamala is like, hey, you know, standing up for him. I think they get points for when and if the moment comes where they're considered. I mean, they're not looked at as opportunists. I think people don't like to see opportunists, and I think they're all, you know, falling in line. What they say behind the scenes is maybe another thing.
Right. And I mean, look at what happened for the entire Trump administration. I mean, he demanded that his people just kiss his ass as loudly and publicly and with red lipstick on as possible. And they did. But the White House leaked like a sieve. I mean, Maggie Haberman's entire career was based on, you know, people calling her up from, you know, on their private cell phone. So
including Bannon, who was a major.
All of them. I mean, all of them. It was. I mean, you know, it was so clear that she was a very well-sourced reporter. But we have spent now more than half the show talking about one thing, and I want to.
Can we do commercials?
Sure.
2 quick
Let's
commercials.
do some commercials.
All right.
Without Project Clean Slate, there is no telling where I would be right now.
It gave him back his life, because once he got the felony, it seemed like life was over.
Being unemployed, being depressed, being a burden. Project Clean Slate helped wipe those things away. I can't say thank you enough. I am now able to work for a reputable airline. Detroit had my back, all because I live in Detroit.
Fellas, I'm new in town, and I've been here a couple times. I absolutely love your place, man. But I've got to ask you, if you can, I've heard that you're going to be shutting this place down.
I'm not proud of it, brother, but we're behind our property taxes. The county is all over us, man. I'm even afraid to even give them a call.
Well, we can't let it go, brother. I mean, we can't give up. There's got to be a GoFundMe campaign that we can run, you know, even pass the plate. Is there a forgiveness program or something that's out there?
Well, unfortunately, that's only for the big guys. No, actually, Wayne County has payment plans for everyone.
Are you for real?
Yes, it's a well-designed program. We want to help you save your business.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. If you have delinquent taxes on your home or business, contact our office, 313-224-5990, or visit our website, treasurer.waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Got it.
And now you announce yourself, Wayne County Treasurer Eric.
I want that barbershop. In hairline. Looks good. I want that barbershop.
Nice job.
All right. I don't want to do
hairs.
too much of a tonal shift here, but we did have a tragic, violent event last weekend in Detroit, which was the mass shooting at a block party on the east side. 2 people were killed. I think something like 17 people were wounded.
19. 21
19.
shot, 2 died.
That's it. And I think 11 are still in the hospital. I was just looking at an update on this. After the successes of the NFL draft and the fireworks, it's like there's been this kind of constant refrain that Detroit is back, Detroit is safe again, blah blah blah. Clearly that's not the case. I mean, this was in a neighborhood. It was a block party, which is of course something that people do around here in the summertime. Get out of the house and party in the street. But something like this was terrible. As far as I know, they still don't have any suspects or arrests. Of course, hundreds of people have to be interviewed. This is going to take a while. I have a feeling they'll probably get somebody to say what actually happened. But this sounds like it was some kind of shootout between perhaps some gangs. I don't know. I mean, what do we do with this? I mean, how do we react to something like this?
Well, I want to start, if I could, I want to start with, I don't know where Steve went, but with what he usually says, and that is you got to deal with the gun issue. The only way you deal with the gun issue, because you're not going to pass the legislation, we're clearly not going to get there, is you got to expose the gun manufacturers to liability. And if you did that, you'd completely change the face of gun culture in the United States. You'd make a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys rich too, which I'm kind of in favor of personally.
That's a good thing.
But I think that we as a society have more than just put our heads in the sand about guns and about the dangers guns present. We've actually kind of put our children up as the sacrificial lambs to our gun society. And it's time we stop doing that. But until we do it, I only want to disagree with one thing you said, Nancy, because I'm afraid you'll pull a gun on me. And that is this. This is not a Detroit problem. It shouldn't be labeled as a Detroit problem. It's happening everywhere in this country. It's happening in rural America. It's happening everywhere because guns are the way to do it. When I was a kid, it wasn't that we didn't have gangs and we didn't have fights. If you were really tough, you had brass knuckles. Occasionally, somebody bring a baseball bat to a fight. But now, everybody brings guns.
Yeah.
It's a different world. And we're sacrificing our kids to it. We shouldn't.
Yeah. Barb.
The last couple months, as you say, we've been talking about all the wonderful successes in our beautiful, shiny downtown Detroit. And it's so lovely. And you can walk around same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. The neighborhoods are a different story. It's a different story when you leave downtown and it's stretched out. Hang on a second, Alan. It's stretched out into the rebranding of the Cass Corridor to Midtown, all the way down. And these neighborhoods on everywhere else in the city, they're really left to twist in the wind. There aren't enough cops. The cops are not the friends of the people as a rule. I spent the morning since you sent out the text this morning, looking at all the different stories about it and the black clubs and what people are desperately trying to do to save their neighborhood. It's got really nice housing stock in that neighborhood.
You look at the pictures of the street where it happened. I mean, those look like just your basic tidy little Detroit brick bungalows.
It could be parts of Royal Oak. It could be parts of Clawson or Ferndale. But the cops didn't come for a long time that night, and maybe it was too late by then. But that seems to be the thing that happens, and it's so frustrating. I grew up in Northwest Detroit. I mean, I'm a former Detroiter, and every once in a while, I think I would love to go. I would love to go back. I could buy my old house that I grew up in, a little tiny bungalow on this beautiful street, the smallest house in the street, and I could get it for $140,000. But it would be a waste of $140,000 basically. That's my retirement. That's my wealth, is the house I bought here in Royal Oak. And as much as I hate to admit it, until we deal with the neighborhoods the way that we deal with downtown.
Did anybody see the Detroit News story about the first cases that are being of the red flag laws being deployed where the police have actually gotten these emergency protective orders and have been able to confiscate guns from people. These are the cases that the gun nuts have been completely psychotic over.
Right.
Oh, this is the first step to Barack Obama coming personally into your house and taking your .38 and pistol whipping you with it on his way out the door, right?
Right.
And it's one couple it's two people with obviously some severe mental illness who are convinced that there's a man hiding in their attic who spies on them. They have several guns. Those got taken away. Suicidal people, where somebody was calling and saying, you got to get this firearm out of this person's hand. I mean, it's been, to what I consider fairly reasonable point of view, it's been progress. I mean, that sounds like we've averted some serious potential tragedies.
One of the big problems is, that the gun is there's a myth around gun ownership and the power, that we have. And until we, kind of understand what that is, address it, it's going to go on. But it disturbs me that, the neighborhoods are dangerous. And I have many clients in those neighborhoods who get the shit kicked out of them by police, and oftentimes they'll have a gun. Right. And they shouldn't have a gun, they don't have a license. But the reason is because the neighborhood is so fucked up and so dangerous. If you live there, you'd have a gun. Yeah. And so it's really disproportionate when we, how we're dealing with this issue. There's a reality in the neighborhoods that you need to defend yourself at all times. You walk to the grocery store, you better be packing.
Right.
And nobody acknowledges that. And that is the root cause. It's poverty, and it just, gives way to these things. So it's a significant issue that just seems to really affect the Black community more than anything else. The other thing is that we seem to have equated guns with God, and we worship guns like we worship God, as if there is a biblical right. The gospel has said you must carry an AR-15.
Yeah.
And since since a certain segment have elevated God and guns to really be the same, it's a philosophical impasse.
It is. Lengel, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I agree with Barb. I agree with Bill to a certain degree, but I think Detroit, it is a national problem. Guns are a national problem, but we in Detroit have to deal with it and not rely on the solutions that Congress never delivers. And in Barb's case, I think, I totally agree. I mean, we know, the NFL draft and the train station, those are all great PR things, and we love it because look at Detroit. But we can't buy into our bullshit that there's not a lot more happening in Detroit, that there's a lot of serious issues that still have to be. And the Detroit isn't all just about the NFL draft and about the train station concert. Those are all phenomenal things that happen in the city, but it doesn't mean that, these block parties is just, it's not like, oh my God, the block parties if we can just get rid of them, crime will be free. We're trying to pinpoint something and say, look, all these great things are happening, but these block parties, we know what the problem is now. It's not the fucking block parties. We do have a gun problem. We have a crime problem in the city.
The response of the city, which was like 2 or 3 days later, to hold a press conference to announce that now block parties have to have a permit and you have to pay $75 or whatever, was one of the weakest. I thought Duggan was basically running for governor, and this is the kind of thing that just makes an administration look.
You looked into that? It's a 21-page document now from the city of Detroit. If you want to hold a block party, you have to
a 21-page document.
30 days out. You have to get 75% of your neighbors to agree that it's okay for you to have this party, and other nuances in this.
Bureaucracy will save Detroit. More.
Yeah. Two things. Two things. One, Allan, I did not mean to imply that we didn't have a problem. The problem is, however, the problem is nationwide, and it's guns. And unfortunately, unless we deal with it nationwide, these guns will just keep coming into the city of Detroit.
They will.
So, more innocent people.
It's like trying to deal with climate change in a city. Guess what?
Right.
Yeah, it's like the peeing in the pool section, right?
You have Detroit, and you have these neighborhoods where people get up every single morning and they polish their little neighborhood. They They sweep, they clean, they knock on their older neighbors' doors to find out if they're okay. I mean, they're everywhere, and it's like they're all Sisyphus.
Yeah.
By the way, my second comment, because I need to get this out. Nancy, I dare you imply that there's any question that Duggan's running for governor.
Oh.
No. He's running for governor.
He's definitely running.
I'll say I'm here in DC where they have pretty strict gun laws. But when you don't have strict gun laws in Maryland and you don't have strict gun laws in Virginia, which are like essentially suburbs of DC, I mean, there are a shitload of guns in DC.
The neighborhoods in Detroit, by the way, are full of love. My grandfather lived in Detroit until his death, and his black neighbors took care of him until he died. They fed him every day. They gave him a bath every day. They asked for nothing in return. It was just full of love. And those neighborhoods still have that ethic. There is still love in these neighborhoods, and these shootings shouldn't take away from those. The shootings is a symptom of a bigger problem. But the Detroit neighborhoods have a remarkable amount of love, and I've seen it. And I think that's what we're trying to say, right?
I mean, nobody's claiming this is because of bad, of the entire city. It's like a few, it's the few kids or whatever, the gangbangers and everything. Hey, I want to bring this show in at 60 minutes, and I want to move on to at least one other topic here. What do we all think? Apparently Dan Gilbert has an option to buy the Renaissance Center, and there's talk that it may be partially demolished, that they may take down some of the surrounding towers and just leave the central one. I think that's a PS. I think that's a terrible idea. But I mean, what do we think about this? The Ren Cent is so awful in many different ways, but it's also our awful. And I kind of feel like I would really miss it if it were gone. I mean, I think it's that great modern brutalist, we're scared in here and we're scared of that scary outside in here. And yet I don't want to see it go. Bill, did you say, have you?
Yeah, I mean, I saw look, Gilbert's a genius in terms of his company's a genius in terms of being business savvy. That's prime real estate. And I've often wondered why the hell they built the Renaissance Center there, because they just block the river. There's all kinds of things you can do. But fundamentally, the other four towers that are only good as office towers. We've got so much office space, empty office space in the city of Detroit.
I know. It is.
Throughout the country, actually, that it's ridiculous. And this is just me speaking, but I'd rather get rid of a Renaissance Center than the Whitney or the David Whitney building. I'd rather really preserve some of the older buildings than
we can.
Renaissance.
I know.
Center.
It's like it's a situation with no really great outcomes. I mean,
if you tear it down, what do you put in there? I mean, we're seeing a new high-rise hotel go in where Joe Louis was.
Right. Well, I mean,
I'm all in favor of tearing it down just because it'll give more people more access to the river, which is really one of our great features in the city.
But we don't. But yeah, I was going to say it's not like there's a lack of access to the river. I mean, there was a story in the news today that the Maroons apparently have abandoned their, Mr. Burns type plan to put a cement plant on the under the Ambassador Bridge, which would allow this beautiful riverfront to finally reach its goal from bridge to bridge, from Belle Isle to the Belle Isle MacArthur Bridge to the Ambassador Bridge. I mean, yay, Maroons, you did something kind of decent. But anyway,
they want credit.
But who knows? I mean, I had a couple days stay in the Renaissance Center last summer for a job that I was doing. I came out every morning and I would, and that cruise ship was docked at the, right outside I was amazed. Just like, what city am I in? This is so bizarre, but it was pretty great.
When they were building the Renaissance, it was just such a, because if you were a Detroiter, you were used to the only place that you could see the river really was from behind Cobo Hall.
Yeah.
There weren't that many, or you could go way down behind the post office.
Right.
You know, and it was just like a mystery. It's like, holy cow, this is cool. You can see. You have to go, you know, either Belle Isle or Cobo Hall to get at it. And that was the first, because you could at least go behind it once the Rensen was built, and that was the beginning of all that.
I get the feeling that
so
in like
ugly.
the 19th and 20th century, people thought they didn't have this idea that you could have recreation next to the river. The river was just a toilet, you know, and it was someplace to like dump your waste and you know, whatever. Exactly. And so you never
industrialists loved the river because it provided access for transportation. It provided the water for various things. I mean, there are all kinds of great industrial use. Just go up and down the river and see what used to be on the river, and you can get it. But you know, the fact of the matter is if you use it all for one thing, you miss the opportunity to use it for another. And we've been terrible about mixed-use development in the city.
If I was Moses and had the power of parting the Detroit River, I would do that like every day just to see what's on the bottom, because you just got to know there's some great shit down there. And
we found a grenade launcher at the base. We found a grenade launcher at the base of the Ambassador Bridge.
Wow. In the water. What were you doing down there? Like diving or what? What do you mean you found it?
Okay. I wasn't diving, but
somebody else was. Okay.
There was a crew down there doing some work.
The Maroon family, were they diving for? They were looking for weaponry.
Actually,
one of the most amusing.
It was the Detroit diving. It was the Detroit police diving group, and they.
Oh right. Yeah, one of my most entertaining afternoons as a journalist was watching those guys pull something like 16 cars out of the river at the what had been the loading dock for a long gone factory kind of down near the bridge. And you know, they would start to bring it up, the divers would go down and hook it up, they'd start to crank the thing up, and then as the you know, the ass end or the front end began to emerge, they'd start saying, "It's going to be a Mercury. No, it's a Ford." You know, and it'd come up and there'd be like these salamanders you know, hanging off. It was great. So
you're finally you'll find the skeletal remains of Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
Did you ever see all those old guys that fish like over by in the old Riverside Park and like behind where the Free Press had their thing? They used, you know, people used to camp at night in the summer, and they would when I worked nights at the papers, we would go down to drink beer after work, and we would go in, and that whole riverfront section would be full of people, families, and the kids would be sleeping in tents, and old guys who are like my age, right? Old people fishing at night, and they would pull up some amazing things.
Yeah, the nine-eyed carp. Yeah,
but they would also they'd pull up fish and they would eat them, which always terrified me.
Have you ever seen the guys who do magnet fishing down there?
Yeah,
and they pull up some weird stuff.
Yeah.
I think there was a story in the Detroit News about a guy, and they find these like voodoo charms where somebody it's usually a plastic pop bottle with like 9 or 10 steak knives in it. And I guess, you know, you throw it in the water and you say your incantation or your curse or whatever. And, you know, and then some few months later, some guy pulls it up and he's like, So anyway. All right. Do we have anything else we want to get to, Alan, before we get to our last segment?
I think we're good.
Okay. You think we're good. Let me just
We're not going to play The Sopranos.
No, we're not going to play The Sopranos. It just wasn't that funny. I'm sorry.
The host gets veto power.
The host gets veto power. I've mistrusted your instincts on The Sopranos ever since you said Tony Soprano was really a nice guy.
No. Wait a minute. I don't know if I said maybe, temporarily. I did like when he said. I love his statement when he said, "I may not have ethics, but I got rules."
You know, Nancy, if you keep this moving, we will not see Giuliani's picture.
Oh, you had to do it, Paul.
You had to say something, didn't you?
There we are.
There he is.
There we go.
There we go. There's Giuliani.
Happy Rudy.
Okay. Masturbator in chief.
Rudy, by the way, has been disbarred now in the state of Michigan or in the state of New York. So this is, I think that is really complete his dive from like the pinnacle of the Southern District of, U.S. Attorney, Southern District of New York, organized crime fighter to, clown with his hands down his pants. Yeah, bankrupt clown, hand down pants, no law license. So there we go.
Wanna be a mob boss.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Allan, let's go to our last segment.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Okay, this is going to be interesting because I don't think I'm going to mumbling while you guys go through this.
Can I go first?
You can absolutely go first.
Take mine, Jim.
So I struggled with this, but then the obvious choice for me is Beryl, the tropical storm. It's not a person, but it's a human name. Obviously bombarded Houston, Texas, and then we got a ton of rain here.
Are you in Houston?
No. I'm here in Metro Detroit.
That's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, we got a ton of rain.
I know people down there, and I think I heard a report on the radio this morning that there are still tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people down there still without power in Houston.
I feel bad for them, but at the same time, they chose to live in Houston, Texas, which I think is one of the worst cities in the country. And
they chose to reelect Greg Abbott, who will not fix the grid for anything.
I'm not going to be that person.
Here's the problem.
There are good people in
if this country reelects Trump. Just because I'm an American, I don't want to be thrown in. I assume that there are a couple of good Texans down in Houston.
There are.
Those few voted for Beto, but whatever his name is. But
they have great Mexican food in Texas. When we were in Italy, I ran into an Italian who wanted to talk to me a lot because he spoke excellent English, and he said, "I have been to America." Now I sound like an Eastern European. Anyway, he said he had been to the United States 14 times. And he had some ideas about what were the best cities. And I said, what's your favorite city? He said, New York. I said, what's your least favorite city? And he looked at me and he said, Houston. Okay. So, Barb, how about you?
I would like to name the New York Times again for still not talking at all about the Epstein papers that were released that show Donald Trump raped a 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old girl.
Alleged.
Yes, sorry. But I would like to say today it's Facebook who has been busy going around to people's pages and telling them that the information that they're showing on Project 2025 is incorrect. And the source that they use for the problems that they're having with that is the Dispatch, which is a right-wing newsletter. So
yeah, right.
And they are Facebook is removing a lot of the posts that mention Project 2025, which everyone should look up every chance you get. And so people are resorting to using the words like P25 and spelling things out to keep their algorithms from catching up. But shame on Facebook. I mean, this is a real thing, and who knows what the real impact is going to be. But and even understanding that this is a free platform that we all use, that's incorrect and that's wrong. And what Zuck thinks he's going to get out of it is besides a huge tax break from Donald Trump.
Trump's protection.
That's it.
Well, I think I think that some of these I'm not so naive as to think Mark Zuckerberg is the one who's making this decision. I think Mark Zuckerberg is surfing and raising his children and just being one of those super, super rich guys. But somebody there is doing this. And I think that what has happened is the right wing has learned to play the game that, more progressive people have been playing for a while, which is to say, fact check, this isn't wrong, or this is incorrect. And so they're just alternative facts. Until Kellyanne Conway's column.
Until the large media takes it on, where else are we going to go?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem.
Okay. Bill.
Mine's Ivan. I hope I'm terrible with names. Ivan Reitlin, who is Trump's self-proclaimed Secretary of Retribution. gathered a list of 350 people's names who, on behalf of Trump, who he plans to try for treason.
Treason?
In military tribunals, including Liz Cheney and a number of others. One of the most dangerous people in Trump orbit. Just think about military tribunals that would bring in the likes of Liz Cheney, one of those real left-wingers.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And there he literally has posted a list of 250.
All right. That's pretty bad. I listened to a podcast about the retribution possibility in the Trump administration, This American Life. It's pretty terrifying. Joel.
Okay. I'm going with tourists. It's like 1,000,000 degrees in the Grand Canyon and elsewhere. And just because you're there on vacation in the Grand Canyon from your desk job in Nebraska doesn't mean you're capable of hiking the canyon with a Dixie cup of water and absolutely no idea what you're doing. So there have been people just dropping off, and it's happening in Greece. People are like, "Hey, I'll take a walk. It's 120 degrees. What could happen? You get heat stroke and death." So I feel bad for those people, but you're such a schmuck. It's so hot. What are you doing? What are you
Natural selection, Joel.
Or why do you want to take? I mean, Death Valley is called Death Valley. Yeah, but you're going to go to Death Valley and take a hike and it's a surprise. That's a schmuckery all around. It's Darwin working his magic.
They're second only to the people in Yellowstone who try to pet the buffalo.
I want to pet a buffalo. What the hell?
Horrible. Yeah. Give me a selfie.
They get gored. All right, Lengel.
I'm going to pick Lauren Boebert, who had put a picture of Biden trying to suggest that some of his missteps are a result of him getting the COVID shot, which is really just so shameful that it used to be when Congress members spoke, they had spoke at a higher elevation and it was more, they had to be more measured in what they said. But we have the idiocy of people like Lauren Boebert who are really just spreading disinformation wherever they can.
That is interesting. You should say that because I think one of the factors that's causing all of this craziness in the world of national politics has been the entertainmentization of politics, which started, I think, with cable news, which had 24 hours to fill and decided to make primetime all about people yelling at each other. People seem to like to watch people yell at each other. And so then we ended up, and now we have, it's trickled on down, as Meryl Streep said in The Devil Wears Prada, it's trickled on down to House races. And now we have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert who have no idea how to, craft legislation, who don't even really know what it is, for that matter. It's all about their brand building and posting videos of them doing CrossFit or, whatever Lauren Boebert does when she's not, feeling some guy up in a theater. So, that's what we've.
Are you suggesting that she's grasping at? Never mind.
Eddie Murphy used to have a catchphrase: "You brought that shit on yourself," and we brought all this shit on ourselves. So, and of course, this show is a tiny little part of it, atomic part of it. Go ahead.
I just wanted to have a second schmuck, which is the three guys who have their nose up Trump's ass to try to be the VP.
Oh, well, there's plenty of those. All right. I have settled on my schmuck in the last 5 minutes, and I've decided it's the schmucks on the majority in the Grosse Pointe School Board. Yeah. Darren Nichols had a really good column in this week's Monday's Free Press about what's going on in the Grosse Pointe School Board, which is, and I'm not going to go into it for you because I don't have Steve here to bounce jokes off of about the Grosse Pointe lawyers. But basically, they have this national politics of extreme division has trickled down to a nonpartisan school board, which is supposed to have the interests of, every student who goes there at heart. But what they're doing is, he says, they're a microcosm of politics today. Those who have the majority flaunt it and penalize those who don't agree with the board's conservative agenda. And that is absolutely true. And so I will go with that. So anyway, all right. with at least a little bit of spillover. We have generally gotten this done in. You know what? We didn't get to the Samantha Woll case, but I bet by next week we're going to have a verdict, and we can talk about that.
I predict by maybe Monday.
By Monday, okay.
They started deliberation on Wednesday. They had yesterday off because one of the jurors couldn't make it, and then Friday today they're deliberating right now. And it's
predicting guilty.
I'll tell you, the prosecutor did a great closing argument, which I thought kind of really elevated the case for him. So I think it's a possibility, but I think the probability of a hung jury is probably more likely.
That's your bet. Okay. Well, we'll find out if you're right next week, and we'll let our commenter, who's always carping about this case, enjoy that. So, okay. Thanks again for being with us.
I want to thank all the people who make these comments, especially Layla, because I love her. I thank all the people who make these comments for us. They keep the show in us.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara Ingalls. Thanks, Jim Kiertzner. Thanks, Bill Seikaly. Thanks, Steve Fishman, who Fishmaned out really early today. Thanks, Joel Sklar. Last word goes to Lengel.
Drive home safely.
All right.
Okay.